so you go right over some.
If not, you can write some.
The big blow.
You can definitely write some.
This is pretty advanced technology. I can't even, conference call on my phone that has conference call button.
Beyond mine.
Yeah,
Little remote mics, that's nice.
yeah, it's quite something.
This has been invaluable for conference calls with the
Yeah, I
attorney,
would
for the
imagine.
select
That's
board,
great.
and for people who aren't here.
That's wise, yeah.
This is Nils Johnson. I'm sorry, I can't take your call right now.
Okay.
Voicemail out.
You did connect.
Let's leave them a really long message.
Yeah, you get like an hour.
The whole meeting.
The whole meeting.
Right, we don't need YouTube.
Right. Oh, my.
Okay, why don't we get started? I was thinking that we would have the planning board and development committee do the asking questions first and having a conversation, and then we'll open up to the public and give everybody a chance to chime in.
Okay.
So I'd like to introduce Steve Whitman from Resilience Planning and Design. He's a professional planner and educator. Assists communities on comprehensive planning initiatives. He's also an alternate to the planning board in Plymouth.
Missing that meeting right now.
Oh, I see. And Russ Tebow, is it?
Tebow,
Tebow.
yes.
President of Applied Economic Research Incorporated, real estate and economic consultant, and an appraiser.
Yes.
It's fascinating.
Mm.
So, and I will let them do the further introductions, so with that,
Sure.
I'll give it over to you.
Thank you very much. So Russ and I, in thinking about coming over here and meeting with you all tonight, we're excited to have a conversation and to dig a little bit deeper into some of the questions that you have. We can add a little bit more context into what we're thinking or what we've done in other communities that could potentially be a way forward here. This project in particular, I think we agree, is not something that either one of us would have gone after individually. I'm really excited about the outreach and engagement portion and really kind of facilitating a process and giving you a clear path forward, but I lack some of Russ's skills. And I don't think you're that excited about coordinating the outreach and engagement.
Yes,
Right.
exactly right.
He's already started digging into the numbers and he has some things he'll share with you, because he can't resist on that front.
Right.
So when this came forward and it was brought to our attention, we've collaborated a lot on other projects, and it just seemed like something that the two of us together could be a good team for Lyme for this. So just a little bit of background on what our firm does, because we would coordinate on behalf of the team. We're based in Plymouth. As Susan said, we do a lot of comprehensive planning work, we do some zoning work, we do a lot of facilitation, outreach, and engagement around different types of issues in small towns, everything from specific infrastructure planning to long-range planning and things like that. I also teach at Plymouth State University. You want to talk about yourself?
A little bit. I'm very happy to be here. I think it's a very interesting project. It's very manageable. The issues that relate to the kind of confluence of development activities and the town's fiscal structure, property taxes, revenues, expenditures, something that I've been working on for a long time. In fact, going back to 1972 when I was at the University of North Carolina, I won an award for modeling the impact of new industrial development on small communities. So it goes back a long time. I formed Applied Economic Research in 1976. Before that, I was working nationally on regional economic issues. That's sort of the subset of economics, which is how an area develops and what the interrelationships are between housing and commercial development, property tax. So regional economics is what I do. Not so much the stuff that you see on maybe CNN and whatnot, more regional economics. I think I probably have done, well, I really believe that I have done more impact studies than anybody in the state in terms of the impact of new development on communities and communities' services and revenues and expenditure patterns. I have an economic model that I developed. It's a spreadsheet-based model, but it works very well. I did it initially for the Bedford Planning Board and have since used it in probably 3 or 4 dozen communities in New Hampshire, ranging from very small projects, 12-lot subdivisions, to most recently I did the economic impact study on behalf of the planning board in Salem on Tuscan Village, which is 2.5 million square feet of commercial space and well over 1,000 housing units. So kind of runs the gamut. I've done a lot of work here in the Upper Valley. Last night I was in Lebanon working on their TIF district in downtown Lebanon. About probably maybe 10 years ago I did the Upper Valley housing analysis for the Regional Planning Commission, and did the visioning study for downtown Lebanon as well. And in all of those studies looked at the regional patterns of development. So I think I understand the Upper Valley region economy and development very, very well. Kind of have a running start on this study. One of the things I'd like to do in this study is kind of, I don't know, Steve, you want me to talk about
No, keep going.
approach? Keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a chance to hear all this on the car on the way out.
That's right, I was trying to figure it out. What am I gonna do? But this model, what it basically, in kind of in layman's terms, and at the, kind of at the 30,000 foot level, I can input 100 units of $300,000 housing. And it will run through the impact of that, tweak to your, specifically to Lyme, in terms of the impact on school enrollment, impact on the school budget, impact on the municipal budget. So then we can say, okay, well, what if it's 100 units of $500,000 housing units? 100 units of $500,000 housing units and run it through, yes.
Can you tweak it to where it's the type of housing unit, like condominium versus single family
Absolutely.
versus apartment complexes, those type of
Yep.
things?
And that was something in the Salem where we did have multiple different types of housing units. And and then you can plug in commercial and industrial development as well. So what it does is I call it a sensitivity analysis, because we don't know, what's right when we're starting as far as the right development plan. We don't know what those impacts are gonna be. So working with the committee, we could put in different assumptions and even do it live and watch the results come out. As I said, this model, I think, goes back to probably the mid-'80s when I started working on it in Bedford, and most recently the Tuscan Village project in Salem. Probably, like I said, probably at least 3 dozen different communities that I've used it. And each time I tweak it a little bit and fit it to the community, the specifics of your revenue, expenditures, demographics. So, as Steve mentioned, I did just something that might be, I looked at it online and pulled together a little bit of information, just a tiny bit that might be of interest to you. I compared Lyme's tax base to other communities in Grafton County,
Just to start to get a handle on it.
just to kind of get a feeling for where you sit. And this is, each year the town, there's another one and another one. Towns report their tax base to the Department of Revenue Administration, and so this compares you to the average community, or the average of all communities in Grafton County, and you can see that you are much more residentially dependent than the average community in Grafton County. And of course, there's Lebanon is in Grafton County, Hanover is, so you have some sort of more urban, but a lot of small communities as well. I also did, and I don't think I have enough of these, maybe I do, to hand out. This looks at, this is sort of the data that,
So if you were to add up all the blue, does that add up to 100?
and it would add up to your total tax base,
Right.
yeah, 100%.
Yep.
Yeah,
Just out of curiosity,
yeah.
I know we're much more than 1% on current use. What are those numbers?
They're on this table, and current use, you have 2.2 million, almost 2.3 million in
that's
assessed
the
valuation.
Assessed value, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the market value would be much higher than that, probably on the order of 10 times or so.
Yeah.
But, so I think it's 1% of your tax base is current use, but a lot more of your land is in
Right.
current use if you did it at market value.
Right.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. So your tax rate by Department of Revenue Administration, the way they calculate, there's several ways to calculate the tax rate, is about $27 per thousand. And the overall average in the county is 21. So you make it 30% higher. I think, you know, I looked at some of your demographics, you know these things, you're an affluent community, you're an older than typical community, median age is almost 50 years old, older than average, and the state, of course, is aging as well. So, but anyway, what I could see doing in terms of the analysis is first meeting with department heads, the community. Anybody else like or need one of these?
Sure, if you got extras, I'd like
Yeah.
to take one.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
It's online too.
Oh, okay.
I'll take one of
While,
those.
while we're looking at this,
You don't want
the
the
bottom
blue
line
ones.
has
That's
a
it.
C.
Thank you.
That's county, I'm sorry, yeah, that's total county, yeah.
I think one of the reasons we wanted to start to share some of this is, you know, as you start to, as Russ gets involved and starts to look at the numbers and starts to address questions that you already have and ask questions of his own, we want to do this in the context of Lyme. My experience with Lyme is it's not flat and all available for development, nor do you want it all developed. So, and I think that came across in the RFP, that in looking at the planning and land use configuration, constraints to development, and your own goals for moving forward as a community, you know, we would be using that to add context. And then interacting with the public, you know, to what degree can we make this information understandable to people so that they can then ask questions and become informed? And then when you come to whatever conclusions result, that everyone can feel invested in that and that they've been a part of the process, you know? So that you're not then having to sell whatever it is that you've
Right.
decided you are or are not gonna do.
I'd like it to come from the community.
Yeah, so that's what we're excited to do, is really engage with people in multiple ways, knowing that no one format really works for everybody. Not everyone's comfortable. He'll speak at a meeting, as you can probably tell, but a lot of people won't. And so they need a way to be able to provide that feedback or ask hard questions.
Yeah, I like the idea of the hard questions, because one of the frustrations for me with the last time we did something like this was that we had a survey, and the survey said, well, do you want this, do you like that, and do you like apple pie? And there was no context, there was no, well, if you want this, this is what would come with it, and
Right.
would you like it as a whole package? So that's sort of an approach that at least I find very, very appealing, to really dig down a little bit instead of just going like, well, it would be really nice to have this thing here, but if you're gonna have this thing here, then here are the implications of having it, and really explaining to us all how that would work, and what are the benefits and the costs of those types of approaches.
Right. I mean, I want to add on to what John's saying, that at one point we talked about having various illustrations, and, you know, I don't think there's any way we possibly have 100 homes, but X number of single-family homes at different price points. What about cluster development? What about, and I think, you know, one of the things that I'd like at least your impression of is, okay, what about a strip mall or a shopping mall? It's probably not economically viable, blah, 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 but, I mean, what effect would that have on the tax base? What effect would that have?
That's a great
impact?
question.
Because if it's gonna bring in $19,000 more in property tax, we can probably say, no, thank you, we don't need that.
Exactly.
If it were to bring in $1 million of property tax, well,
Yeah.
now we gotta talk about it. We have to
Right.
consider it and decide, what do we really wanna do? So, I mean, this is the kind of thing that I would look to you folks to say, oh, yeah, and what if we had, you know, an iron smelting factory here?
Oh, please.
Yeah, I mean, would it
I thought we
generate-
eliminated the smelter.
But I mean, what options would make a difference? Because I think that needs to go into the conversation with the town. People say, well, I think, you know, we should just do a little bit of this. And it's like, well, okay, let's talk about the effect a little bit of this would be, because it might have a really good effect, it might have no effect at all. And having your numbers makes a huge difference for the town.
Yeah, I think I can tell you now that I'm absolutely positive that we can answer those questions, and we can answer them in numbers. What if, and the bottom line really is the tax rate. You know, that's sort of the bottom line of the analysis. You know, a lot of communities have a bias that if they open themselves up to a lot of industrial and commercial development, that it will have a extremely beneficial impact on their tax rate. And it doesn't always. I tell a lot of communities, I mean, I'm not trying to prejudge the study at all, but I tell a lot of communities, look, 80% or 85% of your tax base is residential. Take good care of your residential, the character of your community that supports good residential values. And, you know, you're doing a lot right there. But on the other hand, you do want a balanced community. You know, you don't want to have all elderly people that are maybe affluent, let's say, or all young people that are needy. You know, it's all about balance.
And my hope is that when we go to the public and ask for their input, that we'll have a good grasp of what is possible in Lyme, as opposed to, right now, everyone thinks everything's possible to a certain point. It's not true at all. We have very little developmental land left. That's not current use, not, you know, conservation, that's
Right.
not unbuildable, you know. So my hope is that we get to a point where we can say, well, these are the possibilities that we have, and we can let people discuss those possibilities, and it's just kind of make a circle around what's possible, so we can have more fruitful discussion, instead of discussing what's not ever gonna happen.
Sure.
How would a drive-through coffee shop on Route 10?
Well, you know, I've been working, as I said, I've been working in Lebanon, and Dave Brooks, the planning director in Lebanon, he said, I don't care what you do, just get a brew pub downtown, please. As part of the visioning site, just so you know, and I don't want to dominate the conversation, because a lot of what we're doing is in Steve's Valley, where you know, we're going to have the community involvement. So I'll say this, and then I'll keep quiet for about 15 seconds. That's about my limit.
Maybe 50.
Yeah, but when I did the visioning study for Lebanon, which was just last year that we finished that, I estimated the demand for all these different land uses in the Upper Valley, the whole Upper Valley, and then took a share of that for Lebanon. So that part of the work, that's what's reasonable, I've already done. It's kind of a running start. I honestly don't see any need to change it. It's only a year old. If it's off by 15 or 20%, which it probably is, because any projection is going to be off by something or other, at least it's a reasonable set of housing, industrial, office, and retail needs that's already done. You know, so that would get at the realistic aspect of it.
I just wondered, so with your model, are you able to look at more indirect impacts, not just direct impacts on tax rate? So can you give us a sense about increased demand on housing, and, you know, what would that mean in terms of, are you gonna look at Lyme and go, well, incrementally, that means you might need a new police person?
Yes.
And the service provision that would go along with it, so that would be more direct. I was thinking about the indirect, and then, I assume you've done some modeling in Grafton County, and that you are familiar with the patterns of commuting and where people are coming from to get jobs.
Yeah.
And so thinking about, you know, where we have a lack of working people, where they might be coming from and how we get them here if we were to have more commercial development. So, I mean, I didn't know if that was part of your model that's already set up, or is that, you know, and when John talks about the, well, what's the whole 9 yards that we get along with that, it isn't just the
Right.
tax rate impact, but do you guys go into the indirect stuff as well?
Yeah, I think maybe part of the answer is, the first thing we would do is kind of identify the capacity of what you already have.
Yep.
The impact of new residential development, if you have an average of 10 kids per classroom, is a lot different than if you have an average of 20 kids per classroom. So first thing we do is try to assess the capacity for growth.
Right.
And then run the model within that, and then say, whoa, here's a red flag. It might be schools or fire or police. So that would be the first thing we do, is kind of try to get a sense of the capacity for growth. The term indirect impacts has special meaning in economics, which is basically this, that if you did somehow postulate that a firm with 200 employees moved into town, there would also be, that would be the direct impacts, you can run that through the model. The indirect impact is, okay, well, maybe that adds 50 housing units. And if 50 housing units may add 30 or 40 or 50 kids, that starts getting to the, in economic terms, indirect
Right,
impact
right,
is
yep.
what that first thing triggers as the next thing. So, and we can get at that.
Does the school need to be expanded?
Yeah.
Does the fire, the building need to be, those sorts of things are things we're gonna be interested in.
Yeah, and that is the key, that capacity for additional development is the key thing that kind of will raise a red flag or not raise a red flag. And it's the difference between, and again, trying to not get into the weeds, average cost and marginal cost. Average cost is, costs you 20 grand a student to educate today. But if you add 5 more students into the system, will it cost you 100,000 more? Probably not. You have still one principal, same heating system, same physical
It's just
plan.
where's the tipping point?
Exactly. And public services come in big chunks. It's not like you can buy a pound and a half of Hamburg versus a pound of Hamburg. It comes in big chunks, the cost too. So a lot of it relates to capacity.
I think one of the ways that, excuse me, one of the ways that Lyme is really unique is our school system.
Mm.
Because we have a great elementary school and we have high school choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that our principal has said that he has about 20 people that have contacted him that are waiting to get their kids, or trying to get their kids enrolled in school.
Mm.
And I think we're one of 2 towns in the state that's actually, their school population's growing.
I saw that, and I mentioned it
So
to Steve on the
it's
way
really-
over.
It's really unique, Lyme is
It
really
is.
unique in that way. It's actually better to live in Lyme than Hanover as far as if you have kids, because you have a choice, so we pay the whole amount for the high school kids.
I
So,
saw that, you
and
have a little over 200 kids, 220 or so, and I looked at it currently, and I looked at it back in 2008, and it hadn't, you know, it hadn't sunk like every other district that I've worked with,
Right,
virtually every other
right.
one.
And
So that's-
on that same subject, sorry, that's one of the main attractors to town. I know a couple people sitting in this room right now that are here because of the school system, so that's something that the town has really done a good job in saying, we're gonna build a great school for our kids. And so that definitely should be inside the analysis somewhere, because
Right.
it is.
That's a big piece.
Because I think
Sorry.
any housing we
Sorry.
create is gonna bring more kids than the state average, I would think.
We can look at that specifically. I should mention, just along those lines, you know, I've been doing this for so long that I forget some of the things I've done, but on 3 different occasions, I've done the studies for the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority on their relationship between development and school enrollment, where we matched up in 3 communities, an urban community, a rural community, and a suburban community. Where are the new houses being built by street address, and where are the kids coming from, so that we were able to match them up. So a new single-family home in Milford generates an average of, 1.8 students, whereas an older 2-bedroom unit is less, so we did that work. Yeah.
You know, I am very pleased with the discussion we've had on schools and enrollment and so forth. And I think I think you were talking about drivers. This is one of the main drivers.
Mm.
The thing which has always been a concern to me in this area is how do you measure the pressures? What happens is that there are, having had a son-in-law who was chairman of the school board, and we've had one of our grandchildren is over at the baccalaureate graduating, so we're very involved. That you have, if you have houses, you will have people come in. And that, the pressure from people waiting, how do you measure that? Because we're talking about a subtle, it's not like a business where you can sort of chalk up, you got 20 boxes over here and 10 people want to buy them. And so, because you've got a lot of pressure, which would be there as houses become available. Do you have any way of measuring that?
I think if I understand the question, it really gets down to what is the regional demand for housing, which is driven by the employment base. So you start with regional employment, so many jobs, and that creates a demand for people, which creates a demand for housing at the regional level. And then you look at Lyme's, in this case, historic share of growth in housing units, which, you know, we can get good data on, both locally and from census. And then, so that would tell you the kind of pressure that might be on Lyme.
But see, the pressure is a little different, in that you have people, Lyme's, I'm biased, Lyme schools are really good.
Mhm.
You have people who are renting in other towns,
Mhm.
waiting for a house to
Right.
develop in Lyme and then
Mhm.
moving in. So you've got, it's the pressure, more people move from other towns than from Texas.
Oh, yes. Well, I think the fact that your enrollment hasn't gone down speaks to the fact that families with children want to live in Lyme.
I'm guessing your vacancy rate's really low.
Yes.
Here in town.
Well, no, we do have some houses that are available. If you want 6 bedrooms.
Right, at different price points.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
So I wanna make,
Yeah, please.
actually, 2 quick points again, on education, and then maybe we don't have to perseverate on it anymore. You speak of, you're very right about incremental cost versus marginal cost, except we've got 300-ish kids, school-age kids, 100 in the high school, and we tuition them into Hanover.
Then it's average cost.
And so it is average cost of
You're
about
right.
20K a head,
Mhm.
a high school student. So you'll need to keep that in your
Mhm.
mind.
And we can, yeah.
And then the other is, we have some data about the homes and school kids and all, and we have other data too. What's a good way to get that to you?
Which data are you referring to?
Rusty and I have some numbers as to recent home sales and where kids are and all.
Could
And I
you-
don't know if
could-
that's-
Could you share that with the rest of the?
Absolutely, right.
I'd be interested in looking
Right.
at that.
And so, if that, we can tell you what it is, how we gathered it, and you
Mhm.
can say, oh, no, we can get better data than that,
Mhm.
or you can say, really?
Part of it depends on your assessing system. Do any of you know, is it computerized?
Yes.
We've been able to get, it's a remarkable asset for the kind of work I do, is because we can get that outputted, and then we'll have year built as one of the variables, you know, map, lot, assessed value, address, year built. And then,
1790.
if everybody cooperates, if the school district cooperates, we can isolate the newer built units and match up the addresses
Okay.
of students. Not, without names, we don't want
Sure.
names,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
so that's confidential. But that's the way we've done it in the studies for the Housing Finance Authority. And whenever I do an impact study, I try to do exactly that. And then, you know, you can see, okay, well, this house is assessed for 400, at 28 Main Street, $400,000. And you go to the school records and there's 3 kids, you know.
Yep.
So you can,
So
with local
it sounds
data.
like that particular data you could get on your own.
Yeah, well, you need the town,
Yeah.
you need the
Oh,
town and the
okay.
school district to cooperate. But yeah, with that cooperation, we can, yeah.
Vicky.
Is it okay to change the subject?
As that's what
Okay.
You don't wanna do the study tonight?
No, no. So what I wanted to do was put the heat on Steve.
I'm
And
ready. I
you've done a lot of citizen outreach projects, and many of them have been successful, but there are probably at least one that wasn't. Can you tell me why it wasn't, and what did you learn from that?
I think any ones that we've been involved with that weren't successful, the town relied on one mechanism. They just did a survey, or they just had one meeting and expected that was gonna work for everyone. So I think a single format of outreach and engagement, a one point of contact, just doesn't work. I mean, everybody, the fact that you have people here in the audience tonight and you're filming, so people can look at it after, you've already started your outreach and engagement, and you're already doing more than some communities do. But I think the more things you can do to help people follow the process and be able to share their thoughts and questions along the way will allow for that pressure relief and participation. It almost becomes like a participatory action research project that people can kind of follow and be part of and take ownership of and have their fears addressed and all that. So having an online component, feedback form and or survey is easy to do and really low cost. We already have, accounts on for those. Having a mechanism for people that don't have online access to be able to, at the library or here at town hall, fill out a feedback form, ask questions, get someone to call them. And then also having real-time opportunities where, Russ and I can go off, but if we go off and we work in a bubble, we're not getting the context of Lyme. So already tonight, we've learned a lot more about what you know about the community, questions you have. So when we get to an initial forum, a forum of some type, where we can present his data in easy to understand graphics, and we can allow for interaction. And I actually, as you've already seen tonight, I like it when he gets hit with questions because he's seen a lot of these things before and he understands and he can then dig deeper and often he gets more interested in the project. And it gives us more to talk about after. So allowing people to be part of that and then having us come back with refined results, I think that's very helpful.
So from your best guess,
Yeah.
what would you feel are the different modalities that you would use, and how many events would you think would be appropriate for us?
I think in putting together this proposal, we saw the stakeholder interviews, which are gonna help, meeting with you, but meeting with maybe a couple other key people for Russ. Those interviews early on. Creating the online feedback form. If you think there's a reason for a survey, if there are questions that you'd like to get feedback from people, then a survey is worthwhile. If we're just doing a survey to do a survey, it may not be worthwhile. And then doing the initial analysis and trying to actually create a snapshot of what we know in the context of Lyme, and having a public forum to share that ahead of time. We can use the website, you can put these things online. Share that, invite people out to hear from Russ and ask Russ questions. And if there are things we're still grappling with, we can also have it be an interactive forum. Those are some of our favorite. We kind of use a World Cafe format.
I'm thinking, what I would like to see is some sort of a proposal or options available to the community for them to react to.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right,
So we don't go out and say, what do you want to
right.
see and what your ideas, but this is
I think that was
what's possible.
That's what we heard, I think, from this
Yeah.
committee tonight. Let's come out and tell them potentially what things could
What's
happen
there.
and where.
That's that sensitivity of all.
Yeah.
And maybe just to put things in perspective, and we see this as about a 50-50
Right,
effort. In other words, the outreach is, I've been talking a lot, I know.
Right.
But the outreach
You have a lot to
is,
share.
the outreach is about half, so it's as important as any of the technical stuff I've been talking about.
Yep.
Because,
They're interdependent, they're really.
they are, yeah.
Feed
Right.
each.
of course, I feel that the economics should be
Far more- far more
95%.
important.
But
But
in
he's
fact,
used to being wrong, so.
yeah, I'm an economist, I'm used to being.
In terms of economics,
Yeah.
we're facing millions of dollars worth of road work
Right.
and infrastructure problems
Mhm,
that seem to grow every day.
mhm, mhm.
So, from the select board point of view, there's a tremendous amount of pressure,
Mhm.
and there just isn't the money there.
You already, if you look at this chart, you're already in the top, I don't know,
can't-
10%
yeah,
of
we can't go
towns.
much further, and yet we're in a catch-22 situation because you can't isolate people in their homes because the road is failing. You've got to fix
Right.
them.
Right.
It's my hope that, you said the word before, but it's my hope that you really take a look at maybe talk to the principal of the school, talk to the
Right.
fire chief, talk to the select board, we have two of them.
Right.
And those people to get kind of the overview.
And the police, and the police.
And the police, of course, yeah. All those people kind of get the overview, so you get a good understanding of the top, and then when we go to the people, we'll be able to say, well, here's what you guys discovered,
Mhm.
and you talked to all the stakeholders, and now we're bringing it to the people.
That's
Yeah.
really important, because
Yeah.
we don't have that context. You can
Right.
figure some things out and
You
kind of
can't figure out
identify some
capacities,
questions.
though, you gotta have that
Right.
first
Right.
round of interview, their interviews.
One more element for your information that I don't think has been mentioned as a challenge, been a challenge for the planning board. I think Dave made some good points about our constraints, and another constraint in the town is like the obvious area for development is Route 10, because it's, that's a state road, and then, so part of that is, when do we start killing the goose with the golden egg, how much can that accommodate? But the other thing that we've had feedback on the planning board over the years about are safety issues and bottlenecks on there. One is a school twice a day, where there are potentially serious safety issues. We had the fire chief and the principal and discussed that. And another area is up at Post Pond during the summer season. So I think that's a good thing for you guys to familiarize yourselves with and to take into account of traffic and safety as a significant factor.
Absolutely.
Well, Steve's planning background, I think, provides that expertise to the team. I mean, it's not my bailiwick, it's Steve's. And we were talking about that on the way up. There's a lot of land constraints in this town.
That's one of the great challenge. We have the fiscal pressure combined with serious constraints.
Right.
We do have a senior housing amendment under consideration, and maybe you should take a look at that. The Regional Planning Commission is doing a build-out analysis, and I'm not exactly sure when that'll be done, but that might be helpful for you to have.
So Upper Valley's doing that right now?
I think, did you sign the contract?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
One of the other major constraints is we live in a black hole. And if you try and pick up your cell phone downtown, there is no coverage.
No.
That's huge.
You can't even get public radio.
It's phenomenal in the shadow of Dartmouth,
Right.
which almost invented the internet.
The shadow.
Yeah, but we are in New Hampshire, which
Right.
doesn't support. And I think that in years past, the future for business growth in this area was using what we call cottage industry. Because we have a lot of people who live here and they do business, that all their work is in Boston and all over the country, done electronically.
You have good cable, are they using cable?
No.
Well, no.
DSL, it's all DSL.
It's all DSL.
It's
It's
not
on-
that
I mean, it
good.
is.
It's not that good.
No, it's-
If
it's
you
actually
go,
Should we go?
but there was something
Yeah,
like
don't email us.
an article in the paper talking about 21 baudwits, whatever the average house.
Right.
And the most I can get is 2. And most of the people, I think the average in Lyme is 2, 3, or 4.
But here's the kicker, we have fiber going right down Route 10, right to the middle of town.
Right.
Yeah, hello.
It's a wholesale line.
Right, so,
We have Tim Cook here, can he fix it?
But I mean, this is the type of thing where
Yeah, that's
the
really
type of
puzzling.
contacts that you have.
Right.
Do we set up a town-owned not-for-profit to put it in?
Wi-Fi.
Have other people done that? This is the type of creativity which I think our town needs to address.
Well, that's one of the opportunities that's here. We may not have a lot of flat land, but we've got the fiber that no one's tapped into except for the school, and that's crazy.
Yeah.
And the library.
Sorry.
I recall when AOL first went online and was graphic. I mean, this goes back a long time, and we had to connect to it from my house in Laconia to Concord. And my son, Mark, was on it all the time, and I said to my wife, I said, this is gonna cost us, she said, he's reading. He was playing games on it, And the first bill came in at like $800 for 1 month. I said, now? She said, oh, well, that's different.
I just want
It is a
to,
puzzle.
get to this fellow in the back.
Sorry.
And please introduce
Yes,
yourself.
I'm James Ricker, I'm building over on Acorn Hill. live over on Pleasant Street right now. We're renting, we're part of that pressure you were talking about. We actually rented in Orford when our son was in kindergarten and tuitioned our son to school, so. But I just wanted to make sure that people were aware of Seafoil and the work that they're doing. You know, they're actually, they've made some big progress, so I would suggest that, you know, you reach out to Walt Swift and just touch base with him on, you know.
Are you aware of, I mean, I've heard from time to time, but do you know where they are with it?
So, you know, this is a very soft opening, but the idea right now is that they have the funding, they have some angel investors that are willing to put up the capital to roll out the fiber. And so, like I said, we're actually having a meeting next week, but they're working everything out, but that is, you know, I know it's been a long time coming, but, you know, I would suggest that people reach out to Walt and just, you know, get
Well, you
his
guys should
take on
reach
it.
out to
Yeah,
Walt.
because,
Hear from
Walter
him.
Swift is the fellow's name, and it's breaking news.
Yeah.
And here's another public.
Another what?
Another public.
All right, we're back in.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Phil Placote, I live in, I'm really interested in the presentation, particularly your point that you want to incorporate a number of modalities. But a number of things you both said implies there's a kind of consensus in town. There's a kind of
Sure.
sense that people agree on what they want and where they want to go. Lyme's a very opinionated place, as won't surprise you. I think there are more perspectives on what should happen to Lyme than there are people in town. and I mean, there are two extreme positions, for example, and everything in between. There is a strong group who presents their position strongly in courts and elsewhere that is essentially anti-development. All development is anathema.
Right.
There's another group in town that is not merely happy, but is really sort of proposing major commercial development in town to the greatest extent possible. Want to convert the whole Route 10 strip from Orford to Hanover into commercial development, almost irrelevant as to what's there. So my question is, are you going to come up with a single model which accommodates something either on either radical extreme, or are you going to present a variety of models demonstrating the implications of one or another approach? And how will you go about that?
I think my thought in talking with Russ and then based on the conversation tonight is that we want to look at the data and see what comes out of the data within the context of Lyme. And we want to look at some options which some people may not find that attractive, to see if they're financially viable, or if they meet the spirit of the master plan and other documents that we have access to. And I think we want to look at that so people feel that their options have been explored, but then we want to look to the numbers and see how can we limit those choices? And what choices can be vetted by the public, and what choices ultimately can surface as things that a majority of people would embrace, and that make sense fiscally. If somebody wants to agree to something that doesn't make sense fiscally, they should know that that's the case.
But a number of the issues are not quantitative.
Sure.
They're quality of life, there's the nature of the environment, there's the town that we want to live in the neighborhoods we want to live in. Those are hard to quantify.
I think what
You
we
have to
can,
pay a price for that, I understand that.
Right.
we can inform the decisions that the town is gonna make. But I would feel really uncomfortable trying to make the decisions for the town.
Agreed.
You know, so I think we can say, look, you know, going back to the sensitivity analysis, say if you do 100 units at this price, or if you do 100,000 square feet of commercial space on Route 10, then this.
Right.
But to, you know, to some degree, maybe once you've quantified everything, some of the
Right.
answers become obvious.
That's why I'd like to see multiple models, multiple scenarios.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, one scenarios don't grow.
That's right.
I was
No,
gonna ask,
Yeah,
that's certainly
we can do
one, okay, two
And you'd have
homes a
support
year,
for that.
what happens?
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a kind of project I've wanted to work on, but you can't do it in Manchester, for example, or Concord, because it's too much complex, there's 7 different schools, and, you know, this is kind of a laboratory in a sense. It's a manageable community, but yet it has a
Nobody
lot
ever
of.
called this a
I think
mess.
Oh, okay,
select
okay.
people will agree.
Yeah, it is, okay.
Ask John whether you think it's manageable.
Yeah, okay. it's a manageable size
There you
to
go.
analyze.
Data set, right.
And there's some communities that just don't have the potential to grow.
Right.
So you're
There's no
sort of like,
demand.
it's an exercise that's meaningless.
Right.
You have real options. You can develop Route 10. You can build 100 units over some period of time. You can do senior housing. You can do, you know, and so it's a nice community to work in because it's a size that you can really, there's enough variables there that you can really shed light on a lot of issues that other communities in New Hampshire
I agree.
face.
I agree.
One of the communities I worked in, I told Steve about on the way over, was North Haven, Maine. I don't know if anybody knows North Haven, Maine, but it's an island, you know North Haven?
Oh, yeah.
It's an island about 12 miles off the coast of Rockland, and
Is
there's,
that near Vinyl?
it is, it's right,
Just north.
yeah,
Okay,
right.
Okay, then I know it.
You can have a war between the two of them with just a modest cannon, you know? But it was a great community to work in, first because it's an island off the coast of Maine, and I kind of like that idea. But the other thing was it was 300 people, and so I wanted to get a feeling for the quality of housing. And we sat there with a map, and they said, well, Mrs. Smith redid her kitchen 2 years ago, so that her kitchen's in good shape, but you know, her bathroom's not so good. So it was, you know, it was small enough that you could get a lot of very micro data, but it didn't have a lot of the kind of growth potentials or variables that Lyme has. So it's a good community to do this study in.
What also interests me, and I think you said that, what happens if we do nothing? I think that should be part of the analysis.
Okay. Yeah.
Because, I mean, that is an option.
Mhm.
So I
Right.
think these
No,
were presented
it's
folks.
not.
Well, it might be,
Well,
continue the way you have been
Yeah, I
going.
think that's the way, actually, a bit,
It's not like no growth.
and it creates a,
Right.
it
What are the
creates a,
implications?
Yeah, right.
Right.
Well, the implications
Problem.
of not making any changes.
Right.
Right.
going forward as
Right.
things are,
Yeah.
it gives us a
Right.
baseline.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's always gonna be growth, but.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, things are happening anyway.
Right.
So-
yeah,
But if we just kept the trajectory. that we were-
exactly, yeah.
Oh, so, from your points of view again, what are you thinking of in terms of the timing? How you think you'd see this working out chronologically?
Yeah, I mean, looking at we went back and looked at the RFP today, and you were looking to get started. And I think we're ready to get started if we get asked to do the work. We would wanna go back and do some of that initial data gathering, and we'd be in touch with some of you to collect some of that initial information. And then I think coming back together and having a meeting where we could look at some of the initial data, let him look a little deeper than he has today, and we could present to you a series of outreach and engagement things. We would wanna be talking with you, maybe by phone rather than email. But we'll talk with you to try to get some feedback from you about what you think works well and the timing, knowing that we're coming into summer, which can be a blessing and a curse as far as people's schedules. But to start to put those pieces into motion so that when we came together and had a real work session, we could be refining materials, we could be selecting final dates and showing you outreach materials, things like posters like we showed, and we'll take some of Russ's work and create infographics of things that we want to start to put out into the website, start to feed out to people in different ways. And so we're, I think, happy to have a relatively aggressive timeline if that's what you want to do. If you decide along the way that you need to spread out some of these different public outreach opportunities to make sure you're
Well,
engaging people.
as you said about the summer thing, and we've discussed this, is that a lot of people are away in the summer. I mean, in
Right.
terms of the public input, I had come up a couple of times, and correct me if you disagree or what, but maybe like September, October is where we're gonna get the most people in residence, I think.
After school starts.
Yeah,
Right.
when
Mm,
school-
Yeah, we can be crunching before that.
It gives us a lot of time to be crunching, doing the stakeholder interviews, starting to get some information out there to get people thinking about
The
this.
data stuff can go,
Yep,
but I think you're right, I think, you know, the outreach stuff probably is September-ish.
and that's fine. Does that work okay for you as far as where you're trying to get?
I mean, the RFP, I think, said we wanted to put a bow on it by September 15th. My sense is we'd get a better product if we took another month
Yeah,
and did our outreach in September, everybody's back from
And
school.
a month isn't gonna make
And it's not gonna,
any
right,
difference.
yeah.
We find our biggest months for outreach are June and September, so we're doing a lot of outreach this month, and we have a lot that's starting to pop up for September, so I think you're right.
And if we can have a lot of the data already up on the website for people to kind of look over during the summer,
Right.
That'd be great.
that'd be nice.
I wanted to just talk about leadership for the project
Yeah.
and the public image that we're projecting. And I'm gonna go right to it. The planning board and the community development committee do not have a long history of working together. And what we do need is to be able to present our effort as one of combined interest, you know, for the best of the town. And I don't know, were you all intending to be the main presenters, or are you looking for individuals amongst this combined group to interact with the public, and how were you thinking our public sessions would go? That's the question.
I find it's nice if somebody can stand up, and maybe it's someone from the select board that stands up and just explains in a couple minutes what the initiative is, in case anyone's missed it,
Mhm.
and why we're here. But then I'm happy for us to do the facilitation, and if it's a bigger event, we have additional facilitators through my firm that I can bring in, so that you can actually participate. And so I think it's good if you can fill in the role of participating. Also, if there are people who don't agree with what's being shared or wanna challenge the data, I would rather have those shots fired at us. You know, that we can take some of that, you know what I mean, that's kinda why we're here. So we're trying to make sense of this information, but we do have an outsider's perspective, and so we can be informed by the public.
Well, that's why we need you, is to have an outside perspective,
Sure.
an unbiased, you know, informed view, and also to, I don't think that we're all using the same, you know, book of facts.
Okay,
And we're looking to you all to give us a vocabulary and a set of reliable data that everybody in town can say, okay, yeah, this is our best snapshot of what we got here, and using that, how can we make the best choices for our town? And we really need that, so that this is, I think, a really important opportunity for consensus building in the town. And it's very, I think a lot of people are very passionate and emotional about it because, you know, they feel threatened because they can't afford to be here,
Of
or
course.
don't feel welcome, or, you know, have to transition, you know, where am I gonna go and how's that gonna happen? And, you know, so that there's a lot of, you know, anxiety behind.
well, it's
a
deeply
lot of
personal
this
for different reasons,
some of
right,
this.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do see us filling that role.
Good.
This is something I haven't discussed with other people. Have you used a means of communication by the internet? Are you familiar with Zoom?
Yes.
Have you used that? And do you like to use that or not?
For public meetings or for?
No,
these kinds
just
of
for, you are an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
I don't know, where do you live?
Laconia.
Laconia, so you're another hour. And so it is, that is a restraint on us getting together and eyeball to eyeball.
Mm.
And that's why I found Zooms, well, basically this is, you can talk computer to computer and.
I love it.
And you see the other person.
Yep.
Because I hate that bloody telephone. If you're on a meeting, you can't see what the other people's nonverbals are.
Right. I use Zoom quite a bit. I sit on a couple of boards for nonprofits, and they're in different parts of the state, so we do that. The building that I'm in, the Enterprise Center in Plymouth, we have a conference facility with a big screen and a camera, so we can come on over and we'll Zoom together.
Yeah, I'm
But
only
I-
about a little over a half hour.
Because
from
we
Steve,
could
so.
speak more frequently and not being a budget with the travel, so I
Yeah.
totally agree.
Well, this is what I briefly had mentioned it to Sue once, that we should try to use Zoom, because,
Do you have the facilities here? or
oh, I just use it
On your laptop?
over the internet, yeah.
But you only have DSL?
We do. Well,
No,
we've got fiber.
We have fiber here in this building. There's-
Oh, okay.
Okay. So
There's,
as long as
there's
you're here.
commercial fiber, but, and school, library have fiber.
Okay, okay.
We still have.
But I
we
use
don't
straight
use fiber.
DSL right over the line.
Okay.
Every so often, somebody's up for about 2 or 3 seconds, and they come back here.
Where I thought you were gonna go with your Zoom question, so I totally like that idea. I think it's a good use of resources. And I could also come to you and you can do it too. What, I thought you were gonna go to the Zoom point for the public outreach, and I think filming and putting it on YouTube is great. We've also done Facebook Live for some of the meetings. So I think there are different ways to
Yeah.
engage people who aren't in the meeting.
But you have to realize that you look at the population of Lyme,
Yes,
you've got a group who are perfectly comfortable with Zoom.
right.
You have probably almost the majority of the town who really wouldn't even go near it.
Sure.
So we need eyeball to eyeball,
Mhm.
we need interaction, and we need ways of everybody to feel comfortable.
Okay.
Mhm, mhm.
And that's really the bottom line, to make it any of this work,
Mm.
is to be able to reach out and to have everybody in
Right.
town. It's never gonna be everybody, but as many people as possible,
Mm.
feel like they have been listened to.
I think if you can start as a group identifying what place is best for that, if it's at the school or another building in town, and start thinking about time of week in September, and even start picking some dates.
No, the dates should be selected.
So that'd be good. If we could start nailing that down and knowing that they may have to have another event after that, but at least get that first one set.
Right. I envision talking to various groups, churches in town, the natural constituencies of people that talk to each other and getting them
Yeah.
on board and interested.
I just
Get
wanted
get
to
all
make
the
sure,
firemen in.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that anybody in the public who has something,
Lenore?
that there's
While
somebody.
you're here, there's Lenore Bolton, two things. One, I just wanna put a plug in for affordable senior housing. No children, so, you know, the schools would not be affected. The other thing, Sue mentioned the word isolation. I heard there's more money coming from maybe I misheard it, you know, NHPR, more money from Concord for infrastructure. We've got a bridge that is soon, I don't know when, needs to be redone. Yeah, that's the one to Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
And is that gonna be in the study too, and how it would impact, if they close it?
Oh,
Our access to the internet will be, or to the interstate would be out for
Right.
a
So,
year.
that's why.
It's 2022.
91.
They're gonna do it in
91.
2022.
So it's
it'd be hard to totally ignore it.
red listed bridge now?
Yeah, it's
It's like
scheduled
every
for
6 months
2022, and
they
the
check.
plan is, I'm actually the representative from Lyme to the state for that. They're gonna close it for 6 months the first summer, and then they say 3 months the second summer.
So it's
That's
mainly
their
a summer
tentative.
thing? So it's just gonna be summers, basically?
Yeah.
So you go where?
Sorry, 2022.
Hanover, White River?
No, you get to a
The reason I'm asking is my son goes to that.
Oh.
So
Yeah,
you go north or south, right?
So, and, you know, anything that comes in doesn't have to go through Hanover to get here if they go up 91 and come over.
Right.
So-
No.
Except that right now, part of River Road is closed, so, you know, some of
But
this.
that's,
By then.
that'll be
That
resolved
hopefully
soon,
will be
we'd
resolved
like
by
to think.
November,
Yeah,
yes.
3.5 years from now.
Yeah, by then we'll be doing a new outreach.
By then I'll have to close another section.
I think it's a kind of input that we can get, thank you, Lenore, you know, that's important to the study, to have these, because otherwise, I didn't know that, and so, I think it's, you know, these presentations are really two-way streets, you know, we learn
Right.
as much as we teach, if they go right.
Anybody else got, Michael?
I have a question about your company.
Yep.
Do you have someone on staff who is really highly qualified for developing surveys, or would you outsource this to a specialist?
We typically do it in-house because there aren't the resources from a town to have, I mean, we've worked with people at Plymouth State, social scientists who do surveys, but the cost goes up significantly because the level of outreach to each household and the different modes that they're gonna wanna do a survey are gonna be more than you have in your existing budget. So we typically, myself and Liz Kelly, who works with me, we typically work on the survey.
I was talking mostly about developing the questions.
Yes, that was my answer. And we're open to input from you, and I think, I mean, a good survey is a survey that asks questions and allows for people to give you a range of options and doesn't just ask for them to affirm something. And I'm not yet certain that a survey is the right tool for you. But I think as we get into this, if there are questions that we wanna be asking of the public before the forum, that could be. And if there's a skill set, if you have a survey design skill set, or there are others in the town, we're welcome to accepting volunteer help.
Others have, not I.
Okay, but if you're aware of somebody, yes, yeah.
Anybody else?
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
This has been good.
I've been doing this for 40 years, and sometimes you get a feeling that this could be a lot of fun. I'm getting that feeling.
I rarely associate the word fun with, but maybe.
I'm fortunate, I love my
Well,
job.
that's great.
Yeah, not every day, but most days.
But I do feel like it can be a really good outcome. We can get a really good outcome.
I think so too.
I do too.
That's useful, and
Yeah.
that would just be
Actually,
terrific.
I have a quick question.
There we go, I knew we weren't gonna get out of here.
Yes, Sibel Merrick, I
Could
just,
you
like, you mentioned the,
Could you
web.
just identify yourself?
Oh, Sibel Merrick, you mentioned the website
Yeah.
a few times, is that just, this material is on the town website, or you have a separate website, how is that working?
I like to use the town website, and you're already using the town website well, so I would say we provide information to you to post there,
Okay.
so people have one place to look, and it keeps them going to the town website.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more question, because I might be like one of you, because I didn't come to the last meeting. Where are we in this process of hiring and getting into a contract?
This, my understanding is that.
This is the interview.
This is the
This
interview.
identifying these people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's it.
okay, so,
We will, when, well,
We
does it
can-
not, do we have a quorum
We
here?
can leave if you wanna talk about us.
Okay.
That
Why
works
don't
for
we,
us.
Stay and we can talk about it, make a
okay,
decision?
I just didn't know where we
Yeah,
were, so.
I'm ready to make a
Yeah,
decision.
okay. So we
Thank you
don't
very
have to
much.
make you
Thank
out.
you.
No, it's fine.
It was fun.
Thank you.
Enjoy the sunny weekend.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, just
you very
let us
much.
know. Nice to meet you,
Yeah.
very nice to meet you. Thank you all.
Thank you for coming over
Thanks for
tonight.
coming over.
We like working with each other, so this,
Yeah,
as you said,
really,
this will be fun. I said,
yeah,
hey Russ,
I
you wanna
enjoy
go to
working with
Lyme?
Steve. I can't say that about everybody I work with. Steve is, he reminds me of all the things I forget. He'll send me an email, don't forget, Russ, we gotta, you know.
Well, don't forget to ask him to remind you.
You're right.
There you go.
Thanks so
It
much.
could be problematic.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Did we answer all your questions?
We're gonna have a lot more,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, you answered the ones for tonight, I think.
Yeah, and Steve will be the lead contact if you do, for
Right.
contracts and scheduling and all of that.
Yeah, and I'll have some additional questions, and maybe I'll touch base with Vicki, if we go forward about just kind of the level of mapping here, but Dan Sundquist does all our mapping, and I
Well,
already
we have
have.
actually a really good GIS person
I
in
wondered.
house, Dave Robbins.
Yeah.
So he came from Tele Atlas or Tele Data or
Awesome.
whatever, so we have a GIS here.
That's
And he
wonderful.
does stuff, I mean, he knows how to work it. He's
Because we
not-
can actually get some of
Yeah.
the inquiry, and we can
Yeah.
create simple
No,
graphics of the
he's a
GIS, but.
really good resource
Awesome,
for.
okay.
Did I understand, say that Dan Sonquist does your,
He does all our mapping.
he's terrific. I worked for him, when I was on the board of the Forest Society.
Did you?
For years and years and years.
Yeah, I'm the guy who's been stopping him from fully retiring, but it's gonna happen eventually.
Thanks again, and thanks for
Thank you very
those of
much.
you that came out from the
Good to
public
see
as
you.
well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Take care. Drive safe.
Yep, yep.
Thank you. Yeah, good to see you. Thank you. Good
Thank you very much.
Good
Thanks for
question.
filming. We'll
Good
look to
questions. I like
YouTube
bring
that.
us.
Yes, Naheem, I'll get it to the select board.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out. Nice to see you.
Thanks for your question. Sorry, run over relative. Nice to work.
Sue, I'm gonna have to sneak out fairly quickly.
This will only take 5
Why
minutes.
don't we just get to the,
Meeting
One
matter.
question, okay?
yeah.
Do we wanna have this on video?
Sure.
Okay, okay, that's fine. So they can see what we said about.
Right, right, so they had to leave so that they have to watch it on.
Right, they have to go through an hour of other stuff.
Well, I mean, what are people's thoughts?
I feel they would be good to work with, and I'd be comfortable.
I agree.
Does anybody have reservations? I mean, serious reservations? Okay, so let's
So
do it.
let's hire him.
Yeah, let's do
All
it.
right. Good enough.
Why don't you go, somebody go run out and tell them?
Go tackle them.
Offer him the job.
You're gonna have to negotiate, you're gonna have to get a
Get contract.
Yeah.
Set a
contract
contract.
together, but I
Thank you
think
for
we're
coming.
very close.
Thanks.
Thank
Actually,
you.
can I? So these are on the site too?
No,
Well, you
they're
can-
they're
you can
brand
take
new.
them.
Yeah.
That's David's, but that's
Oh.
fine. You can take mine. I'll find a way to get mine out,
Great.
I'm really
We'll have
happy that
consultants.
we did go out. I think we got some really strong proposals, and I thought that any of them would have done well, but I think this is a really good
We're
team.
way ahead, because from just our conversations as
Mhm.
well as
Yep.
their presentation,
Yep.
they,
No, Russ has been working as long as he said he has, and he's done, as much work as he has, and Steve's a really good outreach
Yep.
person.
We accept.
Congratulations.
We didn't get very far.
Congratulations.
Russ almost got home. What's the best way forward? Do you want me to put together a contract and
Why don't you do that?
work with
Yeah.
you, Susan?
That'd be great,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, it'll be very similar to the scope.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
That'll work.
Good. And then we'll talk on the way over, so I'll follow up with kind of some next steps. How frequently does the committee meet?
Well, there's the committee and the
And the
planning
planning
board,
board.
so we meet together as needed. So as needed, we'll meet.
So we'll put together some next steps, we can talk about it over the next 45 minutes.
Okay.
Whatever
The
you
select
think
board
works.
meets every Thursday morning, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but
For
that's,
contract purposes.
most of us, yeah, but you guys can sign it,
For
but,
contract purposes
Got
and
it.
things like that,
Yep.
we meet every Thursday,
And
so.
Oh, okay.
we
if
meet
there's-
Thursdays.
We'll try to get that
Yeah,
ironed out
maybe-
by next
Yeah,
Thursday, so that
yeah,
you can have.
yeah.
Exactly, that would be great, then
Sure.
we're
Yeah.
online.
And I'm sorry you guys missed the discussion because it was
But
very
you can watch it
contentious.
on the.
Heated, right?
We heard it.
No,
It was
there's two
brutal,
sides to the
but I
town.
really pulled for you. I got you.
All right.
You have to sway them all,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
No,
thanks a
it's
lot.
been, when the first meeting goes as well, it always makes us even more engaged.
Yeah, it's really comfortable group.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
sincerely, I'm
the feeling is-
probably anybody would tell you that, but I mean.
The feeling is mutual, you guys.
Good rapport,
particularly-
which is really
You'll do a
important.
great job.
Excellent. All right.
It'll
We'll
be
get-
fun.
We'll get started. Thank you.
All right. Make it fun.
Thanks for coming and getting us.
Thank you.
so we dismissed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well done, everybody.
Well, I think it was,
It's a tax.
it worked.
It worked. It was
I
a
mean,
process,
it was-
but we got it.
For everybody.